Today I'm going to be making a wood and leather sheath for a Cattaragaus 225Q World War II military knife. I'm going to be making a sheath for this old military knife. This is a when I've been working on it, cleaning it up. The leather case was in bad shape. This is a Cattaragaus 225Q. You can see that, and it's a high carbon steel knife. It was rusty. Has a leather. These are leather rings on here. Tang goes all the way through this knife. It's fun. It's a very sharp high carbon steel knife, and without a sheath I needed to do something with it, or wanted to do something with it. I made a wooden scabbard for it, and that's, you know, that's pretty nice. You see, I can, you know, it's nice and snug, but I'm thinking, well, I can't, you know, this would work, but I kind of want to play with it a little bit, see if I can make a leather and wood sheath. Eventually I'll probably make a nice leather sheath for it, but I was kind of thinking, well, why not make a wood, a different scabbard maybe, and I like the oak, but and then maybe I'll put some leather on it so it becomes a nice sheath. So that's my project for today. I found an old belt that I thought I might be able to use as part of a sheath. So first thing I need to do here is cut a usable piece out of it and see if I can clean it up, get it wet, and then maybe form a fold in one end. So one of the first things I want to do is I found a piece of oak, nice little straight piece of oak. This piece was made out of golden oak, and all I did was put some walnut oil on it and then waxed it. So I really like that coloring, but I have a nice piece of red oak, and so the first thing I did, you know, I've got this, setting this thing out, and I'm running it right up and giving myself just a little bit of slack, not much. I marked it about 1/4 of an inch longer than the blade. I was already cut this end off square, and then you know, trace out the blade on here. So what I'll do is I'm going to probably leave this long for now. Makes it easier to run through the table saw, and my table saw is going to put it's a 10-inch, so it's going to put a nice round like this in. Then I have to cut this, and I'm going to try to do that with a small portable rotary. After I use the table saw to cut this, then so what I'm going to do is cut a slot in here, and where that goes is, so I want to be able to lay this, I want the sheath, the leather, I want the leather to lay on the back of this like such, so that when it goes in, there's no ridge to go over, that it'll sit straight and the leather isn't going to bulge out around it. Like most sheaths, that's okay. You make a leather sheath and you know, you let it bulge out and it works good putting the knife in and stuff, but I'm gonna try this a little different, make it thicker so that the bolster sets right up against this, and then attach the leather to the back. So we'll see how that goes. You can see my table saw set up here. How I'm going to cut this piece. I put this board in as a as a stop right here, and that will limit me to this point right here on my mark. So then I'll be cutting this arc. So then you can see my edge depth where I want this first cut. This is my outside piece. So I had to rethink, make sure, yes, that's my outside piece. And I got my saw set up so that I can get that line. My saw is, yeah, well, you can see what it is. I actually don't use this guide. I have front and rear. I line those up. These are marked off in 1-inch increments, and I kind of eyeball for even. It's good enough for almost everything I do. If I need more precision, then, you know, I get out the calipers and start measuring closely. So now I'm going to rip this, and I'll do is I'll go into my stop, move the fence over just a tad bit, the width of the blade, the width of the knife blade, and then I'll make another cut so I'll have this the right width. So I have my slot cut, and as you can see, it fits just about right. I want it to go, this one to go in easily. Now you can see it's not deep enough. That's fine. That's what my goal is, to use this saw. I've never found much use for this, to be honest with you. It doesn't seem to make a very long cut. It's a very old Ryobi. I love my Ryobi tools, but this one doesn't seem to have much power, and I've never gotten a good blade for it, and I've just never found a lot of use for it. However, it does seem like that's going to be the perfect angle to get that. So that's the next thing. Cut a piece to glue on here. Use some Titebond 2. Glue it and clamp it. It's at about an hour, maybe longer. But this part is mostly done except for shaping and sanding. One thing I want to do, here is cut this side down, because you don't really need all this thickness at the bottom, right? It's like this. But so I'll probably taper it, and I want to come to, well, within like that. So I'll probably taper it, for an idea, something like that, to and angle it all the way back to here. So I just remove remove a lot of excess material. So that's the next thing to do. I'm not sure how I'm going to do that. So here's the plan for cutting that bevel off. I needed to, as I mentioned, I need to cut that edge off at an angle so it is thinner down on the bottom of the scabbard, the sheath, than on the top. So what I did is I made this gadget, and all it is, 2 pieces of wood wedged together. There's a screw down here, there's a screw here. This piece you slide in until you get the angle you want. Then you just tighten the screw up so you have a fixed slider. So what happens is, as this is going down through here, you can see how I'm going to get the angle cut on this piece that I want. And it'll cut down to that thin on this end, which is this end. But as you can see, it still clears the hole, even though it's going through this way. Then this is just a piece of a block of wood I found. Has no purpose other than that's your push stick. I don't really want to push on this because it's not screwed in there, so I'll probably push back here. But that's where it goes, and then it's going to run through that way. So I'll get that cut and see how it goes. Okay, I think you can see what's going on here now. You can see how I tapered that down, where this end is smaller than this end. That worked out pretty well. Sheath fits good. Going to be moving on to the next step, which is putting leather on. I don't think there's anything else I can do to this until I'm ready for the leather. There's no point in rounding it. I could round this top surface, give me something to do, and decide whether to cut that off, which I might. But for now, I got to get the leather ready. Okay, time for me to use this portable bandsaw. I had to redraw this several times. The old adage, measure twice, cut once, or I would have messed up. But I put this arc on the curved side, so I have a flat side on the table. Not that it matters much on this scale. Not a good quality product. Wish I had a real big bandsaw, but I don't have room for one. So, I'm going to use this, and it'll do fine for little stuff like this. Went ahead and did it. Left this side flat. I did just kind of knock this edge off. I'm going to do a lot more finishing on that, but for now that's good. I am going to do one more thing. I don't want to leave just a thin slot here. Even though, you know, you're going to be laying this on a piece of leather, so it's going to be sliding, you know, up to here. You've got to find that hole. So what I'm going to do is just bevel this down, make it twice as big with kind of a chamfer on this bottom side. Not going to do any up here, but just down here, cut this down to here. I'll see if I can whittle in there a little ways, or maybe use a file. That's next. I put a bevel on the inside of this edge, so when I slide the knife in, it won't bind as easily. I have my piece of leather now. This is a ratty old belt I had that it should have been thrown out. It was kind of mildewed, really in bad shape, but I scrubbed it with soap and water, kind of formed a fold into it, and dried it out. Shaved off the inside here where it's going to lay on there, so that that'll be flat. I used a very small sharp hand plane to do that. I don't have a shaving tool for leather, but that worked fantastic, and this leather is so dry I could even do some sanding on it then too. So I'm ready to do that. I'm going to use some tight bound 2 wood glue to glue all of this together. Contact cement would probably be better for leather. If I had real new fresh leather, I would do that. I don't know though how that would hold to the wood. I do trust how the tight bond holds to wood. And worst case scenario, I just you know, cut this off and change it. But this is really just kind of a trial and error. I'm kind of really anxious to get it on there, and then maybe oil up this old piece of leather and see if it can bring some life back into it. So that's what's next. Glue that on. Sheath has been glued. I pulled it out of the clamps maybe after an hour, hour and a half. I'm probably not going to start working this down until tomorrow, because I just want to make sure that glue really has a chance to set up properly. So what I did is I cut another piece of this belt. You know, this is what it looks like. It's not very poor quality material, but kind of fun. I think what it's going to do, it's going to look kind of old and original. This is the way the old Cattaragaus knives were held in. So all I did is I just cut a slot, and that's just the way the original ones were done. I was hemming and hawing as to whether to clamp here, which would, you know, hold this down, or to put the little retaining strap up here. If you put it down here, you have the tendency that, you know, with the knife, you know, doing this sort of thing as you're carrying it around, because all the weight then gets cantilevered out and it can sort of bang around on you, you know, like that. So by putting it up here, it's a better carry option. Got to get used to this snap. There we go. And it really doesn't come out anyway. Zoom out so you can see that. So it still isn't going to come out. And it's going to carry fine. So I am now ready to just let it settle, and tomorrow I'll finish it. I like the way the sheath hangs the knife. This is a really heavy knife, and it doesn't actually even look that big in this sheath, I think. The sheath is finished. I give you some detail. I went over it with sanded, of course, all this, and went over it with walnut oil, and decided to do the leather in walnut oil too, and then used a finish coat of wax. So I think you can see how it turned out. Gives it kind of a, you know, an interesting look. The leather, of course, was really already very badly weathered, and gives it a you can see all the marks and stuff on the old leather, but it's, you know, it's still pretty sturdy. Seems to work well. You can see I've beveled the bottom and the top a little bit. I decided to bevel the top a little bit, make it a little easier to get the knife in, although I don't think it's a big deal. I had everything. I didn't have to go out and buy anything to do this. I had you know, some scrap wood laying around. This is just the oil is giving it this kind of a lighter finish. As a comparison to this old one I did, just was a blade cover. You can see how that's darker, but this is a different type of oak, and it's a lot older. I've had, I don't even, you know, I think it was probably a golden oak. I've had it for many years, but all that's on there is the walnut oil and the wax on both of these. The knife drops in nicely. And there you have it. It's a little different. I think this worked out really well. I tapered this down on this end, and yet the knife doesn't hit the leather at all. Here, where it's sliding in. So now I have a sheath for this knife. If I decide to carry it, it's a heavy knife to carry, but you know, anyway, it gives it a home.